Jurassic Park left a lasting impression on a young Andrew Owen. So picture the scene. When did this come out? 93?
94, wasn't it? Oh, no, 93, you are right.
93,
sorry.
yeah. And I'll say now, this is a film that I saw 3 times in the cinema. And you've got to think back that this was 90s. I would have been 12 going on 13, and Prague would have been the same. Growing up, it was just me, my mum, and my sister, so we didn't have a huge amount of money coming into the household. So to go to the cinema for me would have been a treat. We didn't go regularly. You would probably went a handful of times each year. So to see a film 3 times in 1 year, let's put it that way, I'm probably quite close together. Probably shows how much I loved this film when I first watched it. I can't remember which way it went round, but one of the times I saw it, I think it was the 3rd and final time, I saw it while on an outing, and I was a scout, and we were with Scout, and we went away somewhere. And yeah, I had the choice to go and see Street Fighter or Jurassic Park for the 3rd time.
Oh, what a choice that would have been.
And I chose Jurassic Park. And to this day, I still have never seen Street Fighter.
Was that on the ferry?
No, it was away somewhere. I don't know where. I can't remember. It was in an actual cinema.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, as a film, as a young kid, I loved this film.
We have to do Street Fighter now, considering you haven't seen it. That has to be done.
Isn't it strange how I've never seen Street Fighter, given that it's George-Claude Van Damme. It's
George Claude,
not George. George Claude.
George, Jordan's brother.
Forever known now as George Van Damme. And the fact that it's Street Fighter, and I grew up in the 80s, 90s, and loved that era of gaming. So,
and also it'd be another excuse for you to talk about a game, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm going to talk about games this episode. It'll be my turn. My turn later.
Come on, then. What about your memories, then, Ev?
Well, before that, I was going to ask, what cinema did you see that?
Oh, God knows. So it would have been one of the ones in Cardiff. So probably what was on Queen Street at the time? Odeon, I think it was.
Yeah.
There was one, like I said, we were away somewhere and I saw it there, and I definitely saw it for a second time. It might have been the Swansea cinema.
I was going to say by the old Toys R Us.
Yeah, and I think that was an Odeon as well.
Yeah, because I saw
the Bowlplex.
Yeah, that's it.
I saw this film twice in the cinema. Once up north, and another time actually in the old Odeon, which in Cardiff, which is now Premier Cinemas. And I remember going into the Odeon, and it had stairs going down, like curved down to the screens. I remember, and I think it was for me cousin's birthday. I think it was. I loved it, and I think it was. I was 10. Was it? I think I was 10, going on 11 at that time, and it was one of those, like, it was probably the first big blockbuster film I remember seeing, and you always, like, you saw clips on TV of, like, of Sam Neill's Alan Grant, where he takes the glasses off, and he's looking at the dinosaurs for the first time, and you think, oh, what's this going to be? And then you see the dinosaur for the first time, and you thought, fucking hell, this is amazing. Blew me mind.
Well, I got a vivid memory, actually. I've been in that cinema watching Jurassic Park, and this like Geordie kid behind me crying when the T-Rexes came out.
Yeah,
I'm joking there, obviously.
It was probably me crying. I love this.
What about you, Prague?
Exactly like you guys. Went to the cinema to watch it with my family, my parents, my brother and sister. I can't remember if I saw a trailer and I wanted to go and see it, or whether my parents were like, "We're going to watch this film." But weirdly, with Jurassic Park 2 and Jurassic Park 3, it sort of became like a family event. When a new Jurassic Park film came out, we all went to the cinema to watch it. So that was like a nice little sort of family gathering, sort of family ritual towards the end, despite how good you may think the other films are or not. But yeah, this one, I like Ev's alluded to, it was the first film I watched in the cinema where I remember thinking, wow, that was an experience. And I will say it now, I think this is partly the reason why I love going to the cinema to watch films. Certain films. There are certain films when they come out. For me, I have to go to the cinema to watch them because it's almost the only way you can experience them properly.
I 100% agree with you. When for me, it's the atmosphere that this film creates, and notably the score. The score is so iconic, and when it kicks in, and Eva's mentioned it already, that scene where Sam Neill's character gets out of the Jeep, takes off his glasses, the music kicks in, he sees, I don't know what they...
Brachiosaurus,
whatever, sees it for the first time. And I, like Ev, I remember the first time I would have watched that and thinking, wow. Because you didn't see that sort of CGI, I don't think, to the level previously. And okay, yeah, you would have maybe had it on T2, but I wouldn't have seen T2 at this point.
No.
And
I'm going to say it now. That's my favorite scene.
It's mine. Yeah.
I think it's one of the best scenes in cinema. For sheer spectacle.
It's a scene that I think you should see in the cinema as well. You should see on the big screen, and you should see it with that surround sound.
Yeah.
Or hear it with that surround sound.
The music's incredible, man. It's incredible. The acting is great as well, and just the way Spielberg sets or frames the scene, like they're driving along a line of trees, so it's almost like the dinosaur is shielded in a way, and then they stop, or where Richard Attenborough's character tells them to stop. Hammond tells them to stop because he then sees the dinosaur, and then like each character in turn has got their own reaction, but Spielberg makes sure that you don't see it until the very last moment that you should be seeing it.
Yeah.
To build that anticipation. And thankfully, the CGI at the time was incredible. Like, it was so far ahead of its time. And I'd argue now the CGI still holds up.
100%. But do you know why I think it holds up? It's because they use the CGI sparingly. And I mean sparingly in the sense of you don't get real close-ups using CGI. Any of the close-ups is puppets, amateur, that sort of element of it.
Yeah.
And the CGI tends to be the dinosaurs in the background, the dinosaurs from a long shot. So it works really well. Because what you get with this film is you don't get a huge amount of dinosaur time in the first half of the film.
Yeah, the other thing to do with the dinosaurs and the CGI is, I think the Brachiosaurus is one of the only scenes where you see the CGI in daylight. I think the other uses of CGI, Spielberg's very clever because he actually uses the CGI in dark scenes or dimly lit or shadows. So that way the CGI is almost, you can get away with the CGI not being up to scratch today.
Yeah,
but I think there's two scenes in the film for me which I think would stick. You could put them into any sort of big blockbuster CGI type film and they'd still hold up. that one that we just mentioned, where they see the Brachiosaurus for the first time. But the other one is the long shot where the T-Rex is coming out the paddock where they're trapped in the cars.
Mm,
and that one in particular, I think, is immense.
I think it's fair to say that with this film, I know we talk about favorite aspects or favorite scenes normally in one of the podcasts, but this, I think, for me personally, there's so much to choose from that you almost just want to list everything to make sure you give, to make sure that you're not leaving anything out, but then you just be reeling stuff off for an hour almost.
Yeah. Look, and I've got 3 main points. First point is the soundtrack. I haven't even got the CGI and special effects as one of my main points. I've got the soundtrack as the first one. The second part that I love about the film is the first half is the world building.
Mm.
And the second half is about the dinosaurs and the shit hitting the fan.
Yeah.
And the escape. And I like that about it, that the action sequences, they aren't huge and they are dramatic, but they're not like they are with, I don't know, the Jurassic World films that come out. Yeah. And it's Spielberg again, isn't it? He creates this world. And arguably, you have to do that with the first film anyway. But the second half then just benefits from the fact you haven't gone straight into dinosaurs. I hate it when a film goes straight into either the bad guy or the villain or the bad aspect of the film. You see it very early on. So for me, that's the second point I've got. And then the third point is the cast. Cast is brilliant. Can't fault this cast at all.
Mm.
Although the kids are a little bit annoying.
Yeah, but the kids, and
yeah, no, and then that's it. I will say, sorry, Ev. I will say the other aspect. It's not necessarily a favorite aspect, but as a kid growing up, I had a little bit of a crush on Lex.
Well, you would have been the same age, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I think that was it. There was someone who was roughly the same age as me in a film, and I'm hitting that sort of age where I'm probably interested in girls, but also I'm seeing this film for like the third time in the cinema.
You and your teenage erections.
Yeah. let's not talk about teenage erections.
My favorite aspect is Spielberg, and partly because he's my favorite director. I love what he does in the majority of his films when he's the way he builds a scene. We've spoken about it with the Brachiosaurus scene, but I also put Spielberg as my favorite aspect because he was also making fucking Schindler's List at the same time.
Well, the studio said to him that he had to make Schindler's List first, didn't he? Or was the other way around?
No, he got the green light for Schindler's List, but they said, we want you to do this one first.
Ah, right. So he did most of the film, didn't he? And then he handed it over, the final bits, to another director so he could work on Schindler's List, which was his baby, wasn't it?
Yeah. I think they filmed Jurassic Park, and then he gave it to an editor and also the FX guys to do the special effects. And then he started working on Schindler's List. But while he was filming Schindler's List, and of course, how harrowing is Schindler's List? And also for Spielberg, given that he's the descendant of a Holocaust survivor, so he's got a sort of extra incentive or motivation or emotional impact for him. So while he's doing all that, he's then getting calls and meetings about the post-production on Jurassic Park. So it's almost like he's still doing 2 films at once. And I just think, so for both of those, if both of those films had been good in the same year, you would have thought fair play. But the fact that both of those films are amazing, and for the genre they're in, they're probably, one of the best of their genre. For them both to come out in the same year, I just think, I don't think any director in this day and age will ever do something like that again.
I've got to drop a bombshell here. I've never seen Schindler's List.
I don't blame you though, Ev. It is a
No.
difficult watch. I love the film, right? I love it. I think it's one of my favorite films. I think it's incredible. But I don't hold it against anyone who hasn't seen it because it's difficult.
I've
it's
seen
not
it.
not a choice. I've always wanted to, but never got around to it.
But it's not a typical film that you would just put on like a Sunday afternoon, is it?
No.
It's a film that you have to be invested in. I've only ever seen it once, and I loved it. But I also said to myself after I watched that film, I will not watch that again unless I am fully committed to watching it.
Unless you've got a world-renowned podcast in which you have to watch it for.
Well, yeah. But then I probably hadn't seen that in university, and I think you owned it in University Prague. And I probably would have watched it with you. And it's a difficult watch in the sense of its subject matter.
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I've got different sensibilities to you boys. I mean, I can put myself through something like that time and time again. I mean, I've watched Schindler's List, I don't know how many times, but that's because I've been able to see it slightly differently, I think, to obviously you, and is that despite the lack of humanity shown through the film, I can see a lot of humanity within it as well, especially with the main character, Oscar Schindler. And yes, he's a questionable figure, but through the course of the film, he changes, and I think that's why I'm able to watch it so often. But of course, we're talking about Schindler's List now, so let's go back to Jurassic Park, which is a completely different kind of film.
I'm just quite surprised, and you haven't mentioned the powerhouse Super Nintendo game that was Jurassic Park. I remember renting this from Blockbuster, and it was amazing.
Well, I'll tell you now, if you're going to talk Super Nintendo, probably Prog is the man to talk about it rather than me, simply because he owned one. I'm at Super Nintendo level. I'm probably more familiar with the Mega Drive or Genesis version of Jurassic Park.
And I'm not talking about this game.
But they are good games, both of them. Slightly different, both of them, but really, really good. So
I remember
funny sort of look down angle, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it was a first person shooter at times.
Is that your description of the game?
Yeah. Funny look down angle. And then Ev comes up with a first person shooter. Yeah, that's the one.
I can't wait for your games podcast to start, Dan.
No, I just remember that you had like the night vision goggles that Timmy had, and I remember like certain times you had to wear them to activate doors and stuff.
Yeah, and you had like an electro gun or something, didn't you? In it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Used to stun raptors. Like, psst. Anyway, I digress.
Go on, let's move on to favorite scene, and we've mentioned one major one, and I think probably all three of us mentioned it at one point, which is the first sighting of the dinosaurs. But are there any other aspects?
I'll go for two, and then maybe you boys can add any others then. So the opening, I love the opening where they bring in one of the velociraptors in.
Shoot her!
Yeah.
Shoot her! Yeah.
Funnily enough, I saw a version of this yesterday, and it didn't have that opening scene. I've only just realised I've missed that out. I watched a version that I recorded from TV probably 3 or 4 months ago, knowing that we were going to watch this film.
So you missed the start.
I don't think it had that scene in it, which is really strange, isn't it?
Maybe the timing of the film didn't come.
Maybe because it went straight to the dig.
Yeah, okay. I think your recording has missed the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I would question who you're with, your provider there, but
it's probably my technical ability more than anything.
Yeah. The other scene I was going to mention, although there are a lot of other good scenes, is the conjoining of Alan Grant with the kids climbing the fence and Ellie going to turn the power back on.
All right,
yeah.
yeah.
I like the dual aspect of and the overlapping of those scenes.
Is that the scene where he goes to touch the fence and he goes, ah!
Yeah. That well, it starts there, doesn't it? Yeah.
I've got that down actually within my points. It makes me laugh every time.
Yeah.
I haven't really got any more. There's so many I could pick. I just had those two, knowing that the first one's iconic. The second one made me laugh. You could pick the T-Rex scene, which really interesting point. You know, when the T-Rex comes through the Jeep and the plexiglass falls down on the kids.
Yeah.
Well, that scene was an accident.
Really?
The dinosaur wasn't meant to come as far and push the glass down. But the reaction of the kids is genuine because they didn't expect it either. So they've kept that bit in. And then the bit where they're actually holding the glass going, rah, that's obviously done afterwards.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. Some of the scenes with the T-Rex there, that was I think there's a scene where it's got a side view of the dinosaur's head as it comes up by the fence. They have to film them quite quickly because that was a big massive animatronic head, and because of the water and the artificial weather that they had, the dinosaur's head started shaking. So
it was cold.
Yeah, pretty much. No, it did. I'm remembering things about the film now because back in the day when Sky TV was analog. I remember when Jurassic Park first came on the Sky Movies channels, they had a making of Jurassic Park, like an hour-long sort of behind-the-scenes making of the film. Then they had the film, and I had them both taped on one long play video. I just remember, because they had like with the T-Rex scene as well. When it's coming out the paddock, you see like where the footprints are, the dinosaur and stuff like that. They made the drops of water first, and they had to put the CGI on afterwards. That's probably one of my favorite scenes when the T-Rex comes out the paddock. That and I suppose, would you call it an exposition dump that we mentioned before, where sort of basically when they first go on the tour inside the visitor center and they meet like Mr. DNA, and he's taking them through the stages of dinosaurs and how they made it, and then it goes to them having dinner, and they're talking about the morality of bringing the dinosaurs back to life and stuff. I think that's really good.
Yeah, I like that dinner scene as well. I mean, yeah, you are right. It is kind of an exposition dump, but again, it's done in an interesting way, isn't it?
I got a quick question about that scene. You know, where they meet the DNA character and they watch the video and blah, blah, blah. So, John Hammond, who is Richard Attenborough, the character he plays, he has that little video of himself talking to the real him, right? So does that mean he would have to be at every tour?
No.
Because he goes, hi, John. Oh, hi, John.
I think that video was just for them.
Just for them.
Yeah.
But it's just something I questioned last night, that's all.
Yeah.
And I always thought that as a kid, when he meets Mr. DNA, and I always thought he said Mr. DNA because of the Scottish accent. He's like, oh, Mr. DNA. So it's Mr. DNA. I was like, who's that DNA?
In and around that scene, they meet a scientist, and the book might be like Dr.
Wu.
Wong or Wong.
Henry Wu.
Yeah, he was supposed
Dr.
to
Wu.
have. Well, in the book, he's a more prominent character.
Well, he comes back in the other films.
Oh, does he? I haven't got much memory of the other films.
He's not in 2 and 3, but he's in the Jurassic World films.
Right. So correct me if I'm wrong on this one. So the second one, Jeff Goldblum is in it, isn't he? And he goes back, and is that one called The Lost World?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's about another island where they bred them for the park, wasn't it? Right?
Yeah.
And then the third one is where Sam Neill's character comes back to save a boy on one of those islands.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just so I got my memory
in
the right place.
Going back to the scenes, I'm going to mention one more because I thought one of you two were going to pick it up. But this is the second T-Rex scene where Jeff Goldblum's in the back of the Jeep. I really like that as a chase scene, and I'm not a massive fan of chase scenes.
Yeah.
I think that was not just good, but quite funny as well.
But it's Jeff Goldblum, isn't it? And it's his contribution to that scene that I think makes it 10 times better.
You think they'll have that on the tour?
And I quite like it. I quite like how that scene's used in different films, like Toy Story, for example. In the first film, when they're in RC the car, and they look back and
when they look in the mirror, and there's the little sign which says things might appear larger or closer.
Can I just give a shout out to another Jeff Goldblum line?
Go on.
That is one big pile of shit. That is the one line. When I first went to see Jurassic Park, for some reason, I always remembered that line.
The thing I read up the other day, what's the main lady's name? Laura Dern?
Yeah.
She always gets asked about Jurassic Park, and people always say to her, "Oh, isn't it amazing? You played this scientist in the film, and this amazing film." She always says, "Yeah, but the only thing people ever remember is that I was the woman with my hand in a massive pile of shit."
There's another line Jeff Goldblum says as well when she's walking off. You will remember to wash your hands before you eat anything.
He's funny. He's funny when he's in the car and Ellie, Laura Dern's character, goes out the car, and then Alan Grant goes out the car and follows her, and then just Jeff Goldblum's talking to himself.
Yeah,
by myself, talking to himself. Now that's chaos.
And it always makes me laugh when he's lying down. So he's injured, he's hurt his leg, he's lying down, but he's got like his shirt open, and he's like in some sort of photo shoot.
Yeah, and they've had the spray water, and they've just sprayed his chest so it glistens off the camera.
No, his character's brilliant in it.
But he's got some of the most meaningful dialogue at the start of the film, because he obviously says life finds a way. When they're in with the doctor, and then when they're having the dinner a few minutes later, he's talking about how dinosaurs, they had their chance, and was it right? He's the one that starts the conversation about whether it was right to bring them back.
Yeah, and he has that famous line, doesn't he, which is or is it Ellie, where they say dinosaurs rule the world or something, dinosaurs die, man comes along, and then blah blah blah, dinosaurs eat man.
Woman inherits the earth.
Yeah,
it's Ellie.
Yeah, it's Ellie. I thought it was.
There's some really good dialogue in the film, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's brilliant.
Considering it's meant to be an action adventure film.
Yeah, but I mean, like, we're talking about the main characters, but we haven't even touched on like Samuel L. Jackson as the computer
totally
programmer.
Forgot he was in there. I always remember in the back room, let's call it that. I always remember Dennis
Nedry. Nedry,
I always remember.
In the magic word.
The magic word or password or whatever it is. No, it's the cast I think is brilliant. There's really, really well casted characters in this. Yeah. I would argue the only one that maybe falls a little bit short for me personally is the lawyer, but at the same time, he does well with what he has. He has to be a bit like smarmy and things.
Yeah,
but like it's almost like you're willing him to get eaten on it, especially like because he's a bit of a cock, and he's money hungry, and he says about coupon days, and you can make a killing off of this and blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden he leaves. The final straw is he leaves the kids in the car and just runs off to the toilet, and then it's like it's quite good the way they do that, like the moment of anticipation before the T-Rex eats him, and you just like go on, do it, and it's like chomp. Yeah,
but he is there to be killed, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that as the audience, you're thinking, right, well, people are dying in this film, so that lays some sort of or it lays the groundwork for us to have some sort of trepidation about whether the other characters are going to die as well.
Yeah,
I love the warden.
Yep.
yeah.
I was
No,
going to
I
say,
think
I was
he's
just
really
going
good in it.
to touch on him. Yeah. And it's. I've mentioned this in a previous this type of scene in a previous podcast when we were talking about it and having two sort of points of view in the particular scene, and when he's talking to Alan Grant about the Raptors and how quick they are and how clever they are, you almost hear two conversations at the same ear level. Like you have like John Hammond's conversation when he's trying to talk all nicely about the park, and then you've got Muldoon, I think his name is, talking about how the Raptors are lethal and they're not to be trusted and they're too clever and blah blah blah. I really like that.
Yeah.
The next section, I really don't want us to go into and start talking about because there's some changes.
Look, I think it's apparent that all three of us really, really like this film to various degrees. So I'm okay to go through this.
And I haven't got a huge amount of changes. I got a couple of nitpicks. I got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
But I will admit, when I watched this last night, it's probably the first time I've seen it in 10 years. I've forgotten how much I love this film.
Yeah.
So, and that's why I'm reluctant to do some changes. But I got a couple anyway. I'm going to put it straight out there, right? Moral of the story. This isn't a change, but this is something just to be mindful of. If you ever open a dinosaur park in the future, hire more than one IT guy. Because, well, I suppose Samuel L. Jackson, he's something to do with some sort of control and IT, but Dennis to control everything there.
Well, also, don't have all the fences linked to one system.
Well, yeah, you think they'd have some sort of backup system and backup system.
Yeah. But then to be fair, you could just hire Lex because she seems to do everything. Like this is one of me change. One of me changes
the one
that.
issue I have, right? That there's a bit of a throwaway line earlier in the film that she's into computers and she's like, oh, it's I'm a hacker or whatever, or maybe Tim calls her a hacker, whatever it is.
You're a computer nerd. I prefer to be called a hacker. Yeah.
It's a little bit, but it's typical 90s understanding of computer systems, isn't it? To be honest,
I was going to ask though, was this one of the first uses of hackers in films?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, when was the net with Sandra Bullock out?
Oh, that was way later, but
really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
95.
When was Hackers?
Hackers was. Oh, bear with me. I quite like Hackers as a film.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I'm just asking about. I think
that was 95 as well.
See, I tell you, Jurassic Park's ahead of its time.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I don't know if I've got many else. Oh, I've got something else. Do you know when they go to touch the electric fence for the first time? I've already mentioned it, and it's quite a funny scene. But the bit before it, that always infuriates me. Grant throws a stick at it, but the stick is going to do shit all. It's not going to conduct anything.
Yeah.
So to throw a stick in it and then touch it makes no sense. But again, a little nitpick for me.
I've got a couple. When the Triceratops is sick, we don't know how it got sick. That is.
We do find out.
How?
When Ellie inspects the Triceratops shit, it's to do with the plants that it's been eating.
No, but
she says there's no trace.
Yeah, there's no trace of those dropping or those pods or whatever. And I'm with Ev on this. I read that as it's an unanswered question, and it's something I would have wanted answered.
Yeah, because
they got other problems later on, though, and they so.
Well, yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
I want to know if the doctor got out.
He's
Dr. Wu.
No.
Are you on about the vet?
Yeah.
Who's there with the Triceratops? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Because that's
Yeah,
the
well,
thing. You hear the one line from Samuel L. Jackson saying, "Get everyone to evacuate and leave." But you'd
Yeah.
think that they would just stay on site in some sort of bunker.
Yeah. Well, my question with the Triceratops thing wasn't to do with what actually was wrong with the Triceratops. It's the fact that Ellie turns up and she instantly knows fucking more than the vet.
Well, because she's a what's it called? A paleobotanist.
Yeah.
So she obviously understands all the flowers and the plant life.
Yeah, but the vet is a vet.
Oh yeah, I suppose yeah.
She the one big line with me was Ellie looks at the Triceratops' eyes and goes, "Oh, the pupils are dilated," and the vet goes, "Are they?"
Yeah, I will admit that delivery of that line is not great. Are they?
Yeah.
It's like because I don't think he's facing camera, and I think it might have been added post-production, and it just sounds a little bit off.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't have to make the vet sound so fucking stupid to begin with. They could have just had her go, "Oh, the pupils are dilated," and he could have gone, "Yeah, I know." With something like we're trying to work out why. And
also, that going back to the computer system, how easy would it be to configure that? All Lex does is just double click twice, and then she brings the whole system back up. That has got to be either the easiest or the most lax security wise system ever devised.
I thought it was all to do with, and this is just my reading of the scene, but it was supposedly to do with her just being able to find the right file, wasn't it? Wasn't it that Nedry had turned them off, and now you have to find the right file to turn them back on?
Yeah, they reset the system, but it's just like she goes through like security and stuff like that just by double clicking. I'm just like,
when computers first came around, it might have been just as simple as that, and that's what they called hacking.
Yeah, possibly. And I don't. I've always like wanted to know what was the story behind Dotson and the company that he works for. Who was that?
Just a rival.
Yeah, it's almost like the predator thing. How it's almost like a different story mixed in with the film. How it was almost like industrial espionage type thing with Nedry stealing all the embryos, but you never know why he's doing it or who the company is or stuff like that.
It's a MacGuffin, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what a MacGuffin is?
No, go on.
Yeah. So a MacGuffin is something that Hitchcock came up with, or I think it's a term that Hitchcock coined, where it's basically just something to start the film, to get the plot of the film going. So in something like North by Northwest, they're all chasing this supposed camera film, but you never actually see the film. So it's almost like it's something that doesn't matter to the viewer. It only matters to the people in the film.
Yeah. And they needed that in there because they needed a reason for the systems to go down, and the systems going down was because Dennis needed to get to the docks by a certain time.
Oh, okay.
But I was always amazed, even as a kid, by that little shaving foam contraption that he had.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I questioned the other day, so when they were in the lab, those little embryo things were labeled, but not in the test tubes. So he put everything into that canister, and they would have like taken it away and perhaps hatched these embryos or whatever they would have done with them. But then realized they wouldn't have known what dinosaurs were going to materialize from it.
Yeah.
So it would have been like a Kinder surprise.
Yeah, but one that could have killed you instead of you.
Exactly.
So I got a couple of things I wrote down. Number one were the kid jokes. Now, when I watched them when I was a kid, I laughed. And I distinctly remember being in the cinema when I was 12 years old and hearing people laugh at Timmy's jokes, Timmy's lines, right? I hate trees. Oh, I don't mind trees. Oh, yeah, you weren't in the last one. All of those things, right? After you watch Jurassic Park for the 50th time, those jokes / lines become a bit tiresome. But of course, we're just going over minor nitpicks here, so it's not a massive issue. This is something that I thought about a while ago. I'm watching it again for the podcast. I've tried to put a bit more thought into it. The message of the story I originally thought was life finds a way. Like, you can't contain these creatures. Like, it was almost like destined that they would escape and they would cause carnage. But when you actually think about it, the only reason they escaped is because Nedry faulted the systems. So if it hadn't been a human or human error, the dinosaurs would have still been in their paddocks. Everything would have been fine. So
there's another issue in all of that as well, and that's the reason for them reproducing. And they're reproducing because the DNA that they used was the DNAs from that particular type of frog, which could change its sex.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that.
So what I'm saying is that's also human input.
Yeah, but that wouldn't have the dinosaurs being able to reproduce wouldn't have led the dinosaurs to escape their paddocks.
Oh no, it wouldn't. No.
The only reason the carnage happened on that island is because of Nedry.
Yeah.
So yes, I understand the dinosaurs now being able to breed, and that is the example of life finding a way. But the dinosaurs escaping isn't an example of life finding a way. That's all to do with human error. Anyway, my biggest bugbear with the film, and the one I still don't understand to this day, what the hell is the layout of the T-Rex paddock? The T-Rex comes out through the fences, attacks the people, pushes this car into the T-Rex paddock, but some reason now the T-Rex paddock has got this gaping chasm where the car falls down and lands in a tree. So where does the T-Rex come? Is the T-Rex paddock on a level, and there just so happens to be this chasm where there's a water pipe and all that kind of stuff?
Do you think then that I'm only spitballing here and thinking out loud? Do you think you've got the fence, a massive hole, and then the rest of the paddock? So in theory, the T-Rex shouldn't have come across the big hole or whatever, and then the fence. So it's like a double thing. But that doesn't make any sense, because how does the T-Rex get across it?
Yeah, you're talking about a trench, aren't you?
Not a trench or a moat or whatever.
Yeah.
But no, I get what you mean. Because in theory, I think up until that point, you just think there's a fence, and on the other side of the fence would be a T-Rex at that level. Otherwise, how are they going to see the T-Rex? Because he's going to be down this massive ravine.
What is something, right, that, in all honesty, when you're watching the film, if you're enjoying it, you don't give two shits about, that car going over the edge and falling down a chasm. You don't care, because you're in the film. But when you look back in it and you think to yourself, and obviously I think that's a gift that Spielberg has, where he gets you into the film, or certainly for me anyway, he gets you so into the film that you're just like, you don't see the, I don't want to say error, but it's almost like Spielberg's like, they're not going to care about that. This car's going over the edge, people are in the car, people are in peril, blah, 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 blah. But as an adult, having watched it for so many times, I just don't get what's going on in that paddock. I just don't know. Go on, mate.
Oh no, go on.
I was going to say, I wonder whether Spielberg knew, like, there was a layout for the T-Rex paddock, and there is this logical reason why that chasm is there, or whether it was just a case of the writers and Spielberg being like, this needs to happen here, so we're just gonna have a chasm there, it's gonna go down, that type of thing.
Yeah. there's elements of creative license in this film anyway.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, he did have like scientists and paleontologists and whatever the correct term is advising on the film, and he's gone on record as saying there are times where we took what they said with creative license and changed some elements of it to make it work for a film.
Yeah, and they also did that with some of the dinosaurs, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. And look, if you did it in, so the T-Rex is a really good example. The T-Rex doesn't have teeth like it does in the film. A real T-Rex doesn't have all those spiky teeth, and it's just the way it is. And we know that Grant's sort of dialogue about "don't move, he can't see you unless we move" is a load of bollocks. But at the time, evidence.
That's what was believed, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But also evidence moves on, and things are gonna get thrown out. We know that a lot more dinosaurs now were more feathered than they were. I don't know what the dinosaurs have, scales.
Yeah.
But and that's just what it is. But there's plenty. That the one thing I would say is this film is very close to the source material, the book. And I don't know if you know the story behind it, but Steven Spielberg worked with Michael Crichton on ER, and he said to him at the time, "What are you working on?" And he said, "I'm writing this book about a dinosaur park, blah 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 blah." And it, Spielberg then spoke to Universal and said, "This guy's writing this book. You need to be involved in it." And they purchased the rights to the film before the book had even been published. But and it's really close. The book is a lot more violent, and I haven't read all of the book, but I've read elements of it. I think I've read maybe like the first half or something.
Well, I am aware that there was a portion or chapter or some element of the book where a child dies.
Yeah, and I admittedly I haven't read this bit. There's definitely a scene in there where baby raptors are killed by adult ones. But there's also a scene, and I don't know. There's also a passage. I don't know if it's this book or whether it's subsequent books. But there's a scene where babies died by I don't know what the full version of them is, but they're called compies, and I don't know what the full like technical name of them are. But yeah, they're called compies, and supposedly there's a scene where a nanny comes into the room, and they describe how one of these little creatures is ripping flesh off a baby.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not in this.
Can I just mention one other thing that, if you go into detail, shouldn't happen in the film, and that's when T-Rex saves the day in the visitor center.
Yeah.
How'd he get in there? I mean, if they'd all run out of this entrance that T-Rex had made in the building, then fair enough. But
it's a theme that they carry on into the newer Jurassic World films. I don't know if you've seen them. But T-Rex technically saves the day against the Super T-Rex, doesn't he, in one of the films, along with maybe the Velociraptors as well.
Yeah, one of the raptors.
Yeah. One final element from me, Lex. Why the hell does she switch the light on, and then why doesn't she switch it off?
I just took that as she's a kid and she's scared.
She's a kid and she's stupid. How did I ever crush on someone so stupid?
Well, she does save the day in the end because she gets the power back.
Yeah, but also then, all of that is happening. The T-Rex is like surrounding the car and hitting the car and whatever, and it takes Grant ages to get out of his car to then try and save the kids. But I'm willing to forgive it, because you'd be shit scared, and that's not a scenario you would have ever encountered in your life before.
Yeah, well, I took that as Grant is the supposed expert, so he's probably thinking, look, I don't need to get out right now. Hopefully that car will be able to keep them safe. But of course, once the car flips over, he's got to get out, doesn't he?
Yeah.
While we talk, Well, go on, sorry, Ev.
Oh, I was just going to say, not only just to save Lex, but to save a young, soon-to-be John Deacon from Queen.
Yeah, before he had the chance to write those songs.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of other things about the book while we're talking about it, or while we mentioned it a moment ago, right? So in the book, Grant has a totally different attitude to children. He actually likes children in the book, so that they flip that round. The ages of Lex and Timmy are technically the other way around. It's an older boy and a younger girl. As I mentioned, the book is really violent in parts, and one of the other bits that happens is what's the gamekeeper called again? Muldoon.
Yeah.
He fires a rocket launcher at one of the velociraptors, and it literally like cuts it in half. I haven't read that bit, but I
tell you now, right? If Arnie ever did Jurassic Park, that scene needs to happen.
You're extinct.
Yeah.
And then
I would fucking love to watch that film.
The other thing then that happens is Dennis, his character, there's a scene where he's running and he's actually carrying his intestines because he's been sliced open.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then finally at the end of the film, or the end of the book, the entire island is nuked. Or not nuked, but napalm.
That's right. Yeah. Bloody hell.
So
well, you don't, that ending is a bit overkill, isn't it? Because you don't need to nuke the island; you just leave the dinosaurs on there.
Well, yeah, I think that they didn't want a sequel, which the movie got. Let's put it that way. Oh, then the other interesting fact that I found: normally, whenever a book is written and then adapted into a film, future sort of copies of the book mirror the artwork that's used in the film, because the film is probably more known to people than the book. Funny enough, the artwork of the dinosaur skeleton came from the book first, which I only found out the other day.
It's an iconic sort of cover, look,
definitely.
isn't it? Yeah,
definitely. One final change or question I've got. Grant has a gun, and they're in the control room at the end, and the Velociraptor comes through the window, the door, something. But he only comes through that because Grant shoots the glass. If he saves his bullets, the Velociraptor either doesn't come through the glass because he can't break it.
No, the raptor goes.
The Velociraptor.
No, you hear it on the phone that the raptor's bashing through the glass.
Yeah, but so he should just save his bullets, because it then pans to a shot of the glass with some bullet shots in it.
Yeah, but it's another glass that they're trying to get through. I get where you're coming from, but I took it that the raptor is getting through the glass anyway, so that's why he starts shooting.
But the raptor goes to open the door anyway, doesn't he?
Yeah, but they managed to lock the door.
Locked it. It's a little bit. It's like the scene after that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Anyway, right. Before we ask the final question of would you recommend, we normally do people who could have played the parts or rumored to have played the parts. So I don't know if you guys know some of these, right? So William Hurt and Harrison Ford were potentially considered for Alan Grant.
I would have loved Harrison Ford.
Christina Ricci as Lex. Sean Connery as John Hammond. Robin Wright as Ellie. And this is the one for me. Jim Carrey as Ian Malcolm.
That wouldn't have worked for me.
I think he would have been too
zany.
Over the top.
Yeah, too zany, too over the top.
Yeah. Whereas, as much as I love Jim Carrey, sometimes he's a bit too cartoony, isn't he?
Yeah. Which
this was like peak Ace Ventura.
Yeah.
Periods, Jim Carrey. So it wouldn't have worked.
I'm glad they went with the cast they did. The only one I would have been really interested in seeing would be Harrison Ford as Grant. Yeah. I think he would have been awesome as Grant. But I love Sam Neill, so I'm not going to complain.
So, would you recommend Prague?
Yes, absolutely.
Ev?
Oh, definitely, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big fat yes from me. This film still stands up. It's however many years old, 28 years old. Does that sound about right? 28 years old. Everything I think in this film stands up. and CGI everything, and
Yeah.
and I know there's new Jurassic World films out now, but I would much prefer to watch this over those ones.
Yeah, the new ones are decent. I think the sequels to the original one are decent in their own way as well. You know, enjoyable for various reasons. But the first one's just it's a moment, isn't it, in cinema?
Yeah.
And again, that's why we do this podcast. There are certain films that, as a teenager or whenever we first watched some of these, they meant something to us, and this one is right up there for me. Like I said earlier, for me to go to the cinema 3 times to watch it, there's no other film that's done that for me.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's wrap up there. Podcasts come out every Wednesday. Check us out on social media and YouTube. And if you want us to do a particular film in the future, just let us know. Cheers all.